Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a world that honestly sounds like a high-stakes spy thriller, but it is 100% real. We're going to explore the hidden economy of private hacking firms. Our entire journey today is based on some seriously fascinating recent research by Dr. Vladimir Tsakanyan from the Center for Cyber Diplomacy and International Security. His work completely pulls back the curtain on this booming, shadowy industry that deals in digital weapons, zero-day exploits, and, above all else, secrets. I promise you, by the end of this explainer, the way you think about national security and your own digital privacy is going to completely change. So let's jump right into it.
Okay, so let's start by walking through what a quote-unquote successful operation actually looks like on paper. It usually follows a pretty clean three-step process. First, a government hires a private hacking firm. Second, that firm gets to work. Maybe they penetrate the communications of a foreign dissident, track their movements, figure out who they're talking to. And third, they extract all that highly sensitive encrypted data. The government gets the intel they ask for, they pay the massive bill, and the operation gets marked as a total success. Everyone gets exactly what they paid for, right? It seems totally contained. It seems controlled.
But here is the catch, and it's a massive one. It brings us to the crucial, unasked question. What happens to that intelligence next? You see, this is the question that completely shatters the illusion of a clean operation. Dr. Tsakanyan's research points out something terrifying. No contract specifies, no export license governs, and absolutely no international framework addresses what happens to that intelligence after it leaves the vendor's hands. Has anyone else seen it? Is it being stored somewhere? Could it literally be sold again? The reality is almost no government is actually willing to ask this out loud.
Section 1. The cyber mercenary boom, moving from a niche market to a massive global ecosystem.
You know, a generation ago, these kinds of tools, spyware that can silently rip every piece of data off a phone, destructive malware, full-blown influence operation kits, they were exclusively the playground of the world's most elite, state-run intelligence services. But today, $12 billion. That was the valuation of the commercial trade in offensive cyber capabilities back in 2019, and it has been exploding ever since. We're definitely not talking about a few rogue hackers in a basement anymore. This is a massive, incredibly well-funded, and highly structured corporate industry. To really put that into perspective, consider the number 74. Since 2011, at least 74 different national governments have hired private cyber mercenaries just for the use of spyware alone. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, that's just authoritarian regimes going after journalists, think again. The buyers span the entire political spectrum, absolutely including democratic governments running counterterrorism operations. The demand for this stuff is truly global.
Moving on to Section 2, Selling Plausible Deniability, the real product.
So you might be wondering, why do governments, with all their massive resources and incredibly smart people, even need to turn to third parties? Well, it's because deniability is the product. That's literally what they're paying for. By outsourcing to private cyber mercenaries, governments get to totally conceal their involvement. They can completely sidestep the diplomatic and legal blowback of doing something illegal, invasive, or destructive. If an operation gets blown, the state can just throw up its hands and point the finger at a, quote, rogue private contractor. They aren't just buying software here, they are buying distance from the act itself.
Which brings us to Section 3, the loyalty problem. Operating under a contract.
Buying that distance, however, introduces a pretty terrifying, fatal structural flaw. As the research notes, the hired actor operates under a contract, not a flag. These private firms don't just hand over a secure USB drive to a government client and walk away. Not at all. In most of these setups, the vendor actually keeps access to the infrastructure running the surveillance. That means the harvested intelligence, the private messages, the real-time location data, the contact networks, it all sits, at least for a while, on systems the contracting government doesn't own and literally cannot audit. And for the vendor, controlling that platform is a source of massive, massive leverage.
And because the government doesn't actually own that underlying infrastructure, they completely lose control over how those secrets inevitably leak out. Let's look at how this happens. First, the vendor firms themselves get hacked, exposing the intel of literally every client operation they've ever run. Second, when these companies get bought or sold, their operational logs just transfer right over to the new corporate owners. And third, people change jobs. The talent pool is tiny, the pay is astronomical. And when hackers jump from firm to firm, they carry deep institutional knowledge of state secrets that no security clearance framework was ever built to handle.
Now, this absolutely isn't just some theoretical risk.
Let's anchor this with a very real, incredibly disruptive case study highlighted in the research. In late 2025, a major cybersecurity firm with known government ties was breached. And what happened next? The stolen data, which included highly sensitive intelligence tradecraft, offensive tools, and the actual records of state-sponsored operations, was just dumped onto the dark web and auctioned off to the highest bidder. The buyer had zero relationship to the governments whose operations were exposed. As Dr. Tsakanyan puts it, the secrets moved. They always move.
Let's move into Section 4, the governance gap, and how we are failing to contain the threat.
So what is the global community actually doing about all of this? Well, if we look at the old era of espionage, it was all about state-run intelligence and tightly contained operations. But this new era? It's a messy, wildly unregulated commercial ecosystem built entirely on shared secrets. When governments try to crack down by blacklisting a specific firm, it doesn't actually stop them. It just results in a rebrand. The firm changes its name, shuffles some paperwork, and goes right back to operating.
The regulatory failures here are completely systemic. We're talking about outdated export controls built for a totally different era that are just consistently useless today. Bilateral sanctions from a single government, they essentially get ignored by the broader global market. Incredibly, some of these mercenary groups have even tried to argue they should get sovereign immunity because they sell to governments. If that actually held up in court, it would literally immunize the entire industry from legal accountability. And international agreements? Right now, there are absolutely no binding multilateral agreements under serious negotiation. We've seen some political declarations since 2023, sure, but they are just statements of intent. No teeth, no verification, and zero consequences.
This leads us to our final part, Section 5, a market for secrets and the illusion of control. The stark reality we have to face here is this. Governments are no longer conducting contained intelligence operations. Instead, they are plugging into a massive, shared commercial ecosystem. The intelligence they gather immediately becomes an asset to the vendor, to the vendor's other clients, to rival intelligence agencies monitoring that vendor, and to literally any hacker good enough to breach them. Battlefield telemetry and closely guarded state secrets have morphed into tradable assets. They circulate, they accumulate far, far beyond their intended targets.
There's a line from Dr. Tsakanyan's source material that really sticks with you. The hired gun remembers everything it was asked to do. And the truly scary part is, that hired gun isn't bound by any real enforceable rule to keep that memory to itself. The absolute permanence of this outsourced digital memory is an inherent structural danger to global security.
So as we wrap up this explainer, we're left with a pretty unsettling question to ponder. When the fundamental tools of statecraft are just outsourced to the highest commercial bidder, who really owns your government secrets? Thank you so much for joining me today as we mapped out this hidden ecosystem. Keep questioning everything, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.